Hey y'all, great to see you. Thanks for joining us for the Managed Day Kickoff for 13.2, releasing on July 22nd. I'm Jeremy Watson. I'm joined here by the Access, Compliance, and Import Product Managers. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about what is up next. So without further ado, over to Melissa, who's going to talk a little bit about Managed Access and what they're working on at 13.2.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So we have a couple of exciting updates coming in this release. One of them is actually an item that I talked about in 13.1. Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk about it then, but just as a reminder, this is a issue to basically prevent forking outside of a group. So in case an organization really wants to keep their code basically within the realms of their group, they'll have the option to enable this. And basically what the model that they're following is that users get basically a namespace within that group where they'll now be forking to. So this specifically is just going to be a setting within here to further restrict basically where you can fork to. Another big launch that the team has been working on for a few milestones is project level access tokens. So basically what this allows you to do is to create a token that's scoped to a single project and is not tied to a user that can be used basically for API and Git only. So what this will allow you to do is if you have automation that you basically need to be not tied to a user, but more of a bot or that kind of use case, this is the way that you can do it. It's limited to a single project so that basically the impact can be low in case there's exposure. So this is what it will look like. It will be within settings for a project. And it looks pretty similar to creating a user level token, except like I said, it's within a project. When you create this, this will basically generate a user behind the scenes with maintainer access to this project. And moving forward, you can use this token like you would a regular token. And then another item that we're working on that we're basically building the foundations for, it won't be launched in 13.2, but in a couple of milestones, is basically support for 2FA within the command line. So we're building some foundational items in this milestone, but that's something that you can look forward to in a couple of milestones as being GA. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Awesome, thanks a lot. I'm really happy to see the multi-factor authentication on CLI get prioritized. I think that is going to be a really awesome addition for our enterprise users who can now make sure that they can stay secure with even on the command line, which is awesome. I had a question on the project bots MVC, which is essentially like project access tokens, as far as I understand it. Do you know if that's going to be supported on GitLab.com in 13.2?
Yes. Yeah, we're prioritizing. There were some basically security fixes that we needed to make for GitLab.com. And those were being worked on in 13.1. So the 13.2 is basically some cleanup and experience issues.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks a lot. And so one thing on the prevent forking outside a private group, the design showed like that it was in the permissions area where you could toggle on and off forks on and off, as I recall, and you had a drop down. So can you like select the group that you want to only restrict forks to be into? Like, how does the restriction work?
So this is within the group's settings, right? So basically, it will be an additional option within. Right now, you can say everyone can fork or you can't fork at all. And then what I was thinking is like a third option that says only forking within the group. Like fork anywhere or fork only within the group.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So that control gets controlled at the group level for all projects inside the group and subgroups. So you can only, makes total sense. Love it. Cool. And will that be, sorry, this is a more detailed question. Do you know if that's affects existing projects, or is that just for new projects?
What I was thinking is basically we'll have two options, right? Like allow forking anywhere and then allow forking only within the group. So we give that option, we just default it. Basically, we keep it the same, and then you can change it to the new option if you choose to.
Makes a ton of sense. Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's it for Access. Matt, over to you.
Cool, thanks. Let me share my screen. So the primary focus for the compliance group for this release is going to be largely around refactoring the audit event model. We were previously planning what this would look like and how we were going to tackle this problem. And the problem being that as the audit events exist today, the details are in a serialized hash, and that's really difficult and causes performance issues. It's not desirable for generating things like audit reports or just having the flexibility to build out more seamless features. So we're starting that work in 13.2, but that'll have far-reaching impacts for better performance and usability once we've completed that work. So just raising that because I think that's really important, seeing as the audit events category is one of the more critical ones of our group, and this is a fundamental change. This is not user-facing necessarily. This is primarily for us as GitLab to then build better user-facing features. The other area of focus is on improving the credential inventory and generally improving the credential management of personal access tokens and SSH keys. So the two that we're focusing on in 13.2 are going to be highlighting expired and revoked credentials in the credential inventory. So for expired SSH keys or personal access tokens, we'll highlight those by providing a status symbol that lets you know that this is expired or this has been revoked, in the latter case anyway, because the second issue we're tackling is highlighting revoked personal access tokens. And this is all part of the theme within compliance group to provide visibility for the compliance professionals who are managing compliance within the GitLab groups and projects. We'll also be adding feature parity to the project's API to support the new compliance framework labels. So I believe it was in 13.0, we released compliance framework labels for projects, and that was to help customers designate what projects have compliance requirements or the need for attention to certain controls that might be in place. For us as GitLab, it helps us build features out that lets us scope, let's say, enforcement based on, I want to enforce these settings only for projects that are labeled as PCI DSS or SOX or SOC 2. And so we're bringing that to the API because we find that many of our enterprise customers are managing project creation and monitoring via API. And so this is a critical data point that they need to then drive those decisions for their in-house tooling. And then the last focus is continuing to iterate on the compliance dashboard. So with this particular iteration, we're adding the merge request author to the dashboard because right now it only shows the approver. And so that's another quick way to see if there's a breakdown and separation of duties if the author and the approver are the same person. And so showing these two data points allows somebody to make a quick decision about that. That's pretty much it. These are the focuses for us, and looking forward to seeing especially the audit events refactor starting work.
Thanks a lot, Matt. That looks really awesome. I really appreciate how iterative like a lot of these changes are, where my understanding is like the compliance framework project label, right at the moment, it has no inherent functionality when you label a project with one of these labels, right. But obviously it enables us to do much more interesting things in the future, right?
Yeah, like setting the label itself does nothing for the project. But we do have a feature shipping, I believe in 13.1, that'll allow an administrator to enable specific merge request approval rules at the instance level, and then scope them to enforce them only for these labeled projects. So that way our blast radius goes from this down to this, and it's very focused and targeted on those, I'll call them special projects that have compliance requirements.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. And I just had a simple, a very quick design question, which was under 3B, highlighting the revoked credentials in the inventory. I really like the simple status column, but maybe we could consider combining it with the expired date column at some point, and then maybe just like highlight a date in like bright red and with like a big exclamation point, and so we don't have to have an additional column and have a bunch of white space there. Just something to consider.
Yeah, that's fair. We went through some of that back and forth during the design discussions, trying to figure out how we wanted to represent this. I'd have to go reread to remember the rationale, but I think that's a great suggestion, and it's actually manifesting exactly in that way for the user side. So if a user has an expiration date set on a personal or SSH key, and it expires, it'll highlight orange, yellow if it's within the 7 days leading up to expiration, and then it'll highlight red once it has expired. And that's probably a more seamless way maybe to approach it. And it's not too late, I don't think, for this either, so we can maybe make that change here at the last second.
Cool, awesome. Just something to consider. I don't have strong feelings about it, but yeah, sounds good. Harris, over to you.
Thank you. The theme for import for 13.2 is continuing down the path that we've set on multiple different issues. I'm showing our roadmap board that has the issues in the previous and the current release and the next couple, and there's a lot of continuation that happens here. What we're going to be focusing on in this particular release is for first, continuing to add metrics to measure the importer's performance so that we can fine-tune some of the improvements that we're planning to do for certain importers. So in addition to fine-tuning the North Star metric, where we also started adding dashboards for each one of the importers, and we've started doing that in like 2 milestones ago, and with each milestones we try to get at least one of these delivered so that we can see how long the imports take and eventually be able to tell the percent failed, percent partially succeeded, and get an idea for where our stability and reliability issues really lie with the importers, because we know that from the sheer number of bugs and the feedback we get, we know that there's a lot of reliability issues, but in order to be able to really pinpoint where we have the biggest failures, we're going to need to get more data. So we're, as we're delivering further features, we're also trying to get some of that data bubbled up so that we can make better decisions for where to invest next. Along the same lines, we're also continuing to improve the translations and how much time we invest in having translations regularly merged in. So we have, due to the feedback from the community, we have committed to do at least once a month merges of translations from the crowding tool, and we've been doing that. So we are continuing on that and learning a lot from it so that we can automate this process fully and be able to do translation merges on any kind of cadence we pick, because it will be fully automatic. Currently, there are several manual steps, and one of the important manual steps is really related to sanitizing the translations and making sure that there aren't any kind of attack vectors in those translations for us. So this is one of the issues that we're going to take in 13.2, and it has to do with text sanitizing text and making sure that we can automate fully those translations coming across really fast. In addition to that, we are burning down the bugs and security issues. The reason for that is to continue focusing on performance, stability, and ease of use. We have seen, this is just one data point, so that's not a trend yet, but we actually have seen a slowdown in the number of bugs that we get of the flavor that this importer doesn't work or that other importer breaks. So that it seems like some of it is starting to pay off. Here's an example of, here's a list of all the bugs that we are planning for 13.2 here on the left. And this is just kind of one of the flavors of the type of bugs that we're going to be fixing. And that is, for a particular scenario or for multiple different scenarios, an importer fails, and we need to kind of make sure that it does succeed every time for all of the users who try that. We're going to try to get ahead of the bugs and try to burn down the number that we have. Up until last milestone, I believe, a number of bugs has been still growing. So even though we've been burning down, we've been getting bug reports faster than we were able to burn down. I hope to be able to turn that around and kind of get on top of the stability and reliability issues that we have with the importers. And hopefully the data we're going to get about import success and failure rates will be able to play into pinpointing the issues that have the highest value for us to fix. In addition to that, security is really important, and we have a backlog of security issues. We are on top of the P1s and P2s, but now we need to start burning through the P3s and get closer to our SLAs for those issues. So in this particular release, we are taking on 2 security bugs that were related to import. And in addition to that, we're taking a security bug from access as well in order to help burn down that backlog. I believe that is kind of the flavor for the milestone for import. Anybody have any questions, thoughts?
Thanks for the great summary. I really appreciate it. My own question is, how far do you think we are away from full automation of translation merges with either no manual steps or like an absolute bare minimum?
I would say with this issue that we're taking in 13.2, we should be able, once that's taken care of, we should be able to then finally attack this larger issue of sanitizing translations. That is the biggest hurdle that's ahead of us. Past that, there are just some changes to some of the break tasks and some of the scripts that we have, but really no large issues in order to make this happen. So I believe we are fairly close and maybe 2 milestones away from it.
Cool. Thanks for tackling that. I'm sorry to hear that the sanitization issue is going to require multiple releases. I was hoping that, in my ignorance, that we could just find the right linter or something, and that would kind of help us be able to manage that issue a little bit more. But it's clearly a little more complicated than that.
Yeah,
so.
and well, and maybe not more complicated. It's just that 3 or 4 different issues that need to get closed, and with the priority that we're putting on internationalization, we are trying to really focus on importers while paying some attention to internationalization and getting that closer to where it needs to be. So I guess if we were to put more focus on it, we probably could get it done faster, but I think it was very important for us to get on top of all of our importers issues at the same time. So this is taking longer just because it's somewhat deprioritized compared to some of the other stuff we're working on.
Very good. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate y'all's time. A lot of exciting stuff as usual. Excited to see it all ship July 22nd. Like, fingers crossed, and thanks a lot to y'all for the great work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.